And after 6 months, we were all looking at each other going, this isn't working. But we knew that this was the defining moment, because if we didn't get this bit right, the relationship was gone, the performance gone.
This ad has generated X number of conversions, but for me, the really powerful bit is what happened with those conversions off the back of it. What is the value of those? Because I think if you can't see that information, you're just feeding sort of almost nonsense to the client.
And naturally, the client was like, well, I want my organic searches back. And we were like, well, with the current website, you're not going to get them.
I think for me, I don't know how I could personally do my job without seeing those numbers. The story we told through that presentation, it was so compelling and you couldn't argue with the data and the insights we were able to gather.
There was a quote, if you remember, within the meeting, I think halfway through, where we took the client and the CEO for a particular slide, and he said, hello, I'm Andy Smith from StrategiQ. Welcome to our latest episode of our Strategic video series. For those of you that haven't seen our videos before, we decided some time ago that we wanted to share some of the great work we do with clients, some of the conversations that we have within the agency, to hopefully inspire business owners, leaders, and the marketing community. Today I'm joined by Poppy, StrategiQ's paid media manager, and Lauren, our head of customer experience. And we're here to talk about some work we've been doing with a particular client. More recently, around a quarterly business review, as we call them, or in the industry, it might be a monthly review, a strategy review session. And the reason we thought we'd talk about this today was, of all of the years I've been involved with these sessions with clients, I think this was probably one of the most motivating and inspiring reviews for a number of reasons. And actually, there was a quote, if you remember, within the meeting, I think halfway through, where we took the client and the CEO for a particular slide, and he said, this is the most motivating slide or process I've been through in all of my years with working with a marketing agency. And I think we all looked at each other and thought this is a bit of a defining moment, because it'd be fair to say that we've had some challenges with that client over the last 2 years. So it's an opportunity for us to just kick that around, how we've built that story up within the agency and with the client, how it's been working with the client. And I think there's been some sort of key moments in that relationship. Yeah. So just to kick the conversation off then, what was your overview, Lauren, of that meeting, that day, that particular session, and how did you feel leaving and being part of that?
I think the collaboration of channels and the collaboration of the presentation and how it all came together is a great summary of how we've been working in the last kind of year to really feel confident in what we were presenting back to them. And it almost made, due to what we've done in the last year, it made it easy to present that back to them, because of the transparency and visibility we have from collaborating as one team at StrategiQ.
Yeah, nice. Poppy?
I think for me, it's all underpinned by the customer experience work and having a real in-depth knowledge of what customers are doing, what does that journey look like, and then being able to attribute it back to all of these channels in play to show the worth of the full marketing strategy, and kind of not just highlighting one channel in particular, and really showing what that journey looks like, how all these channels have sort of played within themselves to build to this one sort of business goal. I think the story we told through that presentation, it was so compelling and you couldn't argue with the data and the insights we were able to gather. So it was a brilliant kind of piece of work, and to just be able to see that come to life was, I think just a real sort of eye-opening moment, I think, within the strategy.
Yeah, and I think before we go too too deep in some of the strategy and the tactics. I think for the audience's benefit, it would be interesting to have some context to the journey that we've been on. So I think it's 2.5 years ago since the client first reached out, and I think a lot of the listeners will resonate to the initial inquiry, which was we used to get X amount of leads from search. We've lost some rankings. Our website's not converting, and we want a new search agency. And I remember at the time when we were up against, I think, 2 or 3 other agencies at the time, and we won the pitch, and we ended up for the first 6 months trying to embed a search campaign, and that was organic and paid. So we started off with this. These are the rankings. These are the keywords, and across US and UK. And after 6 months, we were all looking at each other, going, "This isn't working." You know, and it's quite common, isn't it? Because you go, right, we've got to do search. And I remember a meeting, like the first quarterly review, or it might have been in the annual review, actually going, we're just not going to be able to hit the numbers. We're not going to get these rankings back. So we're going to have to put more money into paid. And naturally, the client was like, well, I want my organic searches back. And we were like, well, with the current website, you're not going to get them. Why don't we try social? Why don't we try something else? Why don't we pivot the budget? And there was a real lack of confidence from the client in that meeting. And I remember having a one-to-one with that client, a really tough meeting, going, look, this is not working, what are we going to do? And then everyone feels deflated. And that was a year in, thinking, how are we going to approach this? So then I think about those meetings that sort of are built from then, and the tough conversations we had, and your first, look, you've got all of this data, all of this customer experience work, and it was probably a year ago with HubSpot that you really got under the skin of HubSpot.
Yeah, and really taking that time to understand their customer journey.
Yeah.
So from that point, someone became aware of the brand all the way through to when they had their first kind of experience with the brand, and when they then left the brand, how did we understand that, and how was that more than just search and making sure we executed on the right channels?
Was that customer journey year 1 or year 2? I seem to think it was year 2. I think we were we were banging the search drum for a year, weren't we? And we just weren't getting the results. And actually, if I remember, that coincided with a real sort of downturn, not necessarily economically, but there was a real tough time for the client. The numbers weren't quite right. Marketing wasn't quite working. We were asking for more money, and you can imagine the CEO, and again, listeners, I'm assuming listeners can relate to those real tough moments where it's not working. And was that the point where we pivoted and said, let's get the revenue out of the database, not go and chase new stuff, because we were losing confidence we could do that? Yeah,
so it's when we started to uncover what was in the HubSpot database and what was there, and how we could then learn from that. So segmenting that database, triggering communications at the right time, and supporting other channels like paid when we brought that in with first-party data.
Yeah. And then, so we went through the customer experience piece, we laid that out, and I think that was a crossover point when we started to think about campaign and what the industry calls sort of A/B marketing.
Yeah.
So there was, within the database, there was this lovely conversation around, where are your current customers, where are we doing business with, and how can we get more from those? Yeah. And then the CRMs within their business, they call them CRMs, but
yeah, pretty much their sales team.
Their sales team. So lead would come in, the sales team would follow it up, and it would go into your funnel. Yeah. But what we realised that there wasn't enough going into the top of the funnel again, so we pivoted from organic search, and then we went for more of a paid media, traditional LinkedIn and Google. How was that weighted?
So we started with paid search, obviously, because organic rankings were suffering. But actually what we were finding is that the intent that we were driving through that paid search just wasn't the right quality that we were really seeing. And so pivoting that purely to paid social gave us the opportunity to target the right types of individuals. But I would say there was still a sticking point between you're going out with a new brand to new people and almost getting them to convert from seeing one ad is a very difficult ask to make. And we were seeing kind of the top level engagements, but it was then linking that up to what does that mean in terms of all of the leads that you're driving through the business. So that's when we worked with the HubSpot database to really identify, you've got so much data in here, let's push it back into the platform, let's re-engage users, companies that may not have engaged with you in the last sort of 10 years, to really, go after organisations that still may be interested, but just need that final nudge and have a prior awareness of who the client is.
Yeah, and again, as we're talking here, I'm going through in my own mind the stages with, if we think about 2.5 years, this last kind of meeting being the most positive one because it's all sort of coming together and the story's finally aligned. But I'm going, okay, so we've got our database in a good shape. We understand our customer journey. We're working with sales and marketing better than we ever had. We're putting some paid media awareness campaign stroke marketing at the top of the funnel. But we were still in this moment with the client that the budget wasn't enough for us. The conversions still weren't coming through the site to the same level. So we were still sort of grinding our way through these monthly meetings or weekly touch points with the odd bit of success that had lifted everyone. But a grumpy CEO, naturally, because I would be, with the output. And the moment for me that really made the difference was when we pitched for last year's budget and we got probably 3/4, if not half of what we said they needed, because the budgets just weren't available. And then we had that horrible meeting internally. I remember going, well, we've only got, let's broadly speak, just in case someone makes a connection of what client we're talking about. But let's say we've got £100,000 to keep the numbers round. We wanted 200, so we had half what we wanted or needed, and in our mind. And we had to go, well, what do we do with this? Do we carry on with the database? Do we carry on putting more people in the top of the funnel? And I can't remember who said it in the meeting. I'll take credit for it, why not? But I said, we have to sort this website out, because until we sort the website out, organically, we're never going to get back to where we want to get to in the US. We're not telling the industry and the client base what we do, how we do it, why we do it. The brand looks about 3 years old. The material looked about 3 years old, actually longer. So we were doing this lovely intent-based marketing at the top, but we hadn't joined the journey up with the brand messaging. So telling the client to be bold at that point, going, we're going to slow down your demand and we're going to put 50% of your budget, it was about 50% of your budget for the next 6 months just in your brand repositioning in your website, with the view that we want to increase traffic, increase the content, increase conversions. I think that was a bold move then, wasn't it? Because I think I remember saying, this is either going to work or we won't work together again. And I think there was a slide in that presentation that says, look, if this was our business and it costs our long-term relationship, it's still the right thing to do. So if you choose to go through this process with us and it not work, you'll end up with a great website at the end of it. It's just a shame that we can't see the rest of the journey through. Do you have those same recollections of those moments?
Yeah, and I think for us internally, we had to make sure we got that journey right through the website as well. From those initial designs we produced all the way through to the end product, we had to make sure that the journey was just as good as what we were replacing and better, and it connected up to all of the different elements that we were doing external from the website, like the paid and the HubSpot integration as well.
Yeah, because there were some really lovely campaign adverts, weren't there? And I think if I look at the campaign now, if I look at the ads now, everything works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The campaign creatives look great. The email series looks great. The web experience looks great. the material that the client takes their client through looks great. It's sort of, it's almost like everything's come together, rightly so. But were you involved in the part of the website when we were having a conversation where it was built and designed and we stopped it because we didn't? I know you were, because you were the one that stopped it. But were you from a paid media? You know, when we said these pages are not going to convert, were you part of that?
I think I was part of kind of conversations in the background, but I do remember the conversation and the meeting that was had about kind of, yes, it's a lovely website, but it needs to be functional as well. And I think that's always the tricky balance that every agency has, is we want to make sure something looks lovely, but if it, at the end of the day, if it doesn't convert, then it's that fine balance between the two. So yeah, I do remember that conversation happening, but it was an important one to have.
And again, the purpose of having this video for the people watching it is, I'm sure that the marketing community will resonate. I'm sure that marketing teams will resonate. But I think it's so important that people speak up in the key moments, because actually we were probably over budget on the website from an agency side, because it looked great and the video integration was great, and the web team had done a brilliant job of the search structure. But that page, the main traffic where the page was where the highly converting pages, they were just, if I'm honest, always honest, I hate that. The developers or the designers were sort of throwing the pages together with the asset blocks, weren't they? And we actually had to restructure the whole journey and rewrite all the content.
Yeah. When
we were, I would say, overburning on the project. But we knew that this was the defining moment, because if we didn't get this bit right, the relationship was gone, the performance gone, the business, so I think it's worth taking note of that moment, because it came into the conversation a couple of weeks ago, didn't it? Yeah,
and I think we had overcomplicated with the design elements and things like that. We'd overcomplicated what we actually wanted the user to do from those pages, and all we did, it sounds simple now, but humanise that journey and make it more accessible for someone who had no idea what the client did to actually understand easily what they were getting, and then submit that form that we wanted them to do on that page. So yeah, what we took was an overcomplicated journey and really simplified it down.
And that's the benefit of having great designers, great developers, but actually we keep talking about this customer experience conversation and UX and UI, and making sure that there's a paid media view on it as well. Because I mean, I go back to the good old days of landing page design and certain platforms and tools you can use to create splash pages or landing pages where they're high converting pages. I don't know if I've ever really subscribe to that. I always think that the website should be a good enough experience in order to convert. And I understand that landing pages are a quick way to do that. And I think that's what we were talking about. It's like, if we're going to send this traffic into the website, are we comfortable that you're going to get the output? And we shouldn't need this landing page experience.
Yeah, we had to take a step back to take some steps forward, and that was putting ourselves back in the customer's shoes. And yes, it made sense to us because we were really familiar with the brand, but actually a new customer coming from paid or social or wherever they'd come from, it had to make sense to them, and they had to understand what they were getting as a benefit of converting on that page.
So let's take it back to where we started. And this moment within the meeting that we took the client through, and you mentioned earlier the story that we narrated. I looked at some of the stats, and I've got some of the slides from that presentation, because I think it's important for us to understand, and the viewers to understand, what we've done and what we've delivered, because we've been speaking a lot about value reporting and why we exist as an agency and how we align to the client's objectives and all the stuff that we should be talking about. But the visibility that we have around attribution now is the thing that blew me away. Mm-hmm. Like literally everything from where the client came in, what channel they came in from. But to lean on some of these statistics, we've got 704 new deals. Put my glasses back on. 704 new deals, 19.5% up on the previous period. 332 closed won, 19.4% up on the previous period. And then we get really granular. You get really granular in this slide where it says 123 deals from organic search. Bearing in mind 2 years ago we were on our behinds with search, partly because of what we inherited, but partly because we realised what we couldn't achieve with the old site. And then it goes even more granular. Since March, we've got 360,000 pounds worth of revenue attributed to search. I mean, every time I get a new client inquiry, or every time we come into a review of a client's performance, to be able to granularly attribute that amount of revenue to that amount of deals to that channel is utopia, right? This is where we're all trying to get to. 6 deals from paid social in a particular period, 4 deals from email marketing since March. So you think the level of detail you guys are going into in terms of attribution, and I know this isn't across all of our client base because we haven't got all of these things in these elements in place. What's your views on that? Because you're in the account every day, really.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
I think for me, I don't know how I could personally do my job without seeing those numbers. I can see in a platform, yes, this ad has generated X number of conversions, but for me, the really powerful bit is what happened with those conversions off the back of it. What is the value of those? Because I think if you can't see that information, you're just feeding sort of almost nonsense to the client about what you've actually done. Being able to show how that's then attributed to the business performance is what I get out of bed in the morning for. It's having that business impact, and where we see real power in what we can drive is being able to see that full journey of a conversion is generated and then how much revenue did that bring in at the back end is incredibly powerful, and it'd make my job impossible to not have that information. So it's everything for paid.
Anything? I know where you're going to go, but you go.
I think it's the most exciting part of working with this client. I think, like Poppy said, how we can see a customer journey from that point, right from the beginning all the way through to they've now got a deal open, it's just closed, they're pending delivery. It's exciting to see that customer progress and how we can build that story on the impact we've had. I think my favourite part of that meeting was we had taken some first-party data out of the HubSpot CRM system for one of our most recent paid campaigns, and a client they hadn't done business with for 15 years, I think it was, had come back through the funnel, and we were able to track all the way from how many times they'd clicked on the paid media ad all the way through to they then converted and viewed X pages on the website. They received a welcome email within minutes of submitting that form, and they now had a deal open that was pending delivery in the coming months. And that story and all those touch points we were able to pull together from just having the visibility in HubSpot and how sales and marketing is working together, how marketing started that and how one of the sales teams picked up and developed that relationship. Yeah. It was just a really nice 360 picture to view and bring to life as such.
Yeah, I'll come back to a thought around one of our other videos we've done in this series about how customer experience is tied into brand, is tied to website. We'll talk about it. I think from my side, there was another slide that was equally motivating, which was the client set us a target this year. Mm-hmm. We haven't touched on that yet in the conversation, but at the start of this year, because we were under pressure to deliver, we agreed with the client that if they were going to spend X, we would deliver Y. And what I loved was the team knew exactly where we were to the penny, So to put some context on it again, figures, say the target was 250,000. We knew that we'd done 200,000. We knew that we had 5 deals in the pipeline with a whole quarter left to go. If they closed those deals, we'd already hit our target. And from my side, as an account director of the role I take with this particular client, it's so nice to know that not only are we going to hit target, we can see the target, we know the clients, and they're taking accountability to close it. But also the conversation now, I think the meeting is next week to talk about next year's budget. We've broken this cycle of, do we value marketing? Do we value strategic? Do we value the strategy? And have we got confidence that next year that we can hit our numbers based on the activity? And I think bringing that slide together was, I wouldn't say it's a moment, because this is not the only time we've gone into that level of detail with a client and we have that success. But I think if we could replicate that across the rest of the client base, it would be you'd feel like you did every day because you've got the visibility. So the question therefore to you two really, for the purpose of the listeners as well, is what are the key elements to what we do with this particular account that gives us the attribution, that gives us the visibility, that's enabled us to hit the target? What have we actually done? If I go to you first, Poppy, if there was 3 things that there might be more, so don't stop, but if there was 3 things we've done brilliantly with this client and therefore anyone listening could replicate, what would they be?
I think the main one for me is the blending of all the different data sources that we've got. Obviously, HubSpot sits centrally to that, but using all of the ad platform data, bringing in things like lead forensics as well, to really showcase that full buyer journey, I think is fundamental to why we've been able to show that value to the client as well, and being really mindful of those other platforms when we're optimizing campaigns as well, and not just being solely focused on the ad platform itself, looking at the wider things that we're seeing. I mean, me and Lauren have conversations on a daily basis saying, we've got this new contact in, the deal's here. Oh, and by the way, they engaged with this LinkedIn ad 3 weeks ago. It's that continual learning and that conversation that we're having collectively. And I think it's also really important to note the relationship that marketing has with the sales team and actually combining efforts. I think we've had conversations with other clients where it's like, oh no, performance is down, it's the sales team's fault or it's marketing's fault, but actually it's one collective effort. And if we continue to have those conversations, that's when you get utopia, and that's when it really, really works. So yeah, for me, it's blending data sources and having that open, honest conversations with sales teams as well for that one effort.
3 things?
I think the main reason for our success is because we've not worked as individual silos. Whether that's on the client side or our side, we've come together as an integrated team in terms of, like Poppy said, we communicate daily around what's happening in that HubSpot account. We talk to the client regularly. We understand from a customer journey perspective what that customer is going through and what are the key stages. And off the back of understanding that customer journey, we're able to execute timely communication. So uncovering that data, being able to trigger out whether that's emails or retargeting ads, we were able to build that 360 picture and be able to really drive that transparency. So without having that understanding and without working as an integrated team, we never would have achieved what we have achieved.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add to that is patience. And those moments of sort of honesty and transparency and confidence to make the right decision or just back yourself. Because again, if I come back to where we started, it's a 2.5-year relationship that it's taken, and there's some real bold moments in there in terms of moving some search to go into the database, to getting customer journey done. We're now seeing search being one of the biggest lead sources or a part of the awareness. And we haven't really done any SEO for a year. We've just built a great website with great content and done marketing around it. And all the SEO conferences you go out about doing the basics really well. We've had to strip everything back and work with the client, and we talk about indispensable partnerships. Like, genuinely, this is the best example of an indispensable partnership, where we've gone through a whole process of understanding the business needs. We've led and developed the brand. We've written a marketing strategy. We've got customer experience nailed down to a T with sales and marketing, and their tech and their business is connected as well. So again, you know, for the listeners or viewers looking at our other video series, is the one there's one we've spoken about between how marketing strategy or how strategy should be considered now. And it just shows that actually if you follow that framework, it does work. So lots of work to do this year. We've got to pitch more work or bigger targets for next year with the client. Really excited about it. But most importantly, I think it's just a nice moment for us to say that we can do great work if everyone's aligned. If the data is there, attribution's there, and creative's on top of it, then we can be confident, irrespective of what the industry is telling us and the market is telling us, the economic pressures are telling us, you can grow if you've got the right strategy.